So in 2023, I feel like I've done a pretty decent job talking about the various things going on with video game companies such as both Nintendo and Xbox. Now, they do sort of intertwine with each other, but we've talked a lot about Xbox's 2023 and sort of how it's going to work. I feel like we pretty much we really understand what Xbox is doing in 2023. We know what games they're wanting to bring to the table. We know how this year is essentially going to play out. We just don't know when some of those games are actually releasing. But games like Starfield, the new Forza game, which I'm very excited for, Redfall, we know that these games are allegedly coming in 2023. We just don't know the timetable. Nintendo, kind of something a bit similar, except that, well, this is just for the first half of the year. For the first half of 2023, it is well laid out for us. We know up until Tears of the Kingdom, and then what's going on the back end. It's something that we've been speculating about. I honestly feel like it's just going to be smaller releases from Nintendo. They are moving on to the next generation, whatever their new system is going to be, and I just feel like that's going to sort of, be their focus. They're going to ride Tears of the Kingdom for as long as they can. A lot of the DLC for Nintendo games also ends at the end of 2023. The writing is on the wall. But PlayStation, I feel, is in a very interesting position for 2023, because for the first time in a while, PlayStation actually has the mystery surrounding them. PlayStation has sort of the speculation of what they're actually doing, and they've done some things in 2023. And so in today's video, I kind of want to talk about what they've done so far, the latest state of play and how that sort of plays into things, and what they have planned for 2023. Because as of the time of the filming of this video, which is on February 25th, we know about one PlayStation 5 big game as far as being made by a Sony owned company, and of course that game is Spider-Man 2. Now, Spider-Man 2 is allegedly coming out in the fall of this year, and I'm super excited for it. I am super excited for it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. When it comes to first party Sony franchises, Spider-Man is my favorite. I love Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man Miles Morales. I cannot get enough of these Spider-Man games, especially when we're starting to introduce new characters and potentially different variants of Spider-Man. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. But that's just one game, and one game can be very impactful. You could say the same thing about Nintendo. Well, Nintendo really only has one game, at least so far for 2023, with something like Tears of the Kingdom, and I wouldn't argue with you about the scale and the scope of those games, but I would say, there's other stuff. There is your Advance Wars, your weird, cringy Bayonetta game that I just don't understand how people are excited for that. You of course had Kirby, which just came out. You had Fire Emblem. There's been some other stuff that, when you look at Sony, really hasn't been that way. So what are they doing in 2023? Is that all they're really bringing to the table? And I feel like that's a short-sighted thing. I feel like that's a short-sighted thing to say, because I've seen articles pop up, and that's actually what spurned on this video, because people are like, well, where's PlayStation? When you look at that latest State of Play event, it was not good. Considering that we don't know what they're doing for this year, that was not a good presentation, because they didn't answer any sort of questions. They focused in on PlayStation VR 2. They showed off some third-party stuff. They showed off that horrible-looking Suicide Squad game. That's what Rocksteady's been doing for 8 years? Because I thought they were doing drugs. And maybe they were doing drugs, and that's where they came up with this game, because that game looks, oh my God, always online. It's like, do these companies not learn? Did we not see what happened with the Avengers game? Did we not see what happened with the Avengers? And we're just like, you know what? Let's make something kind of like the Avengers game, but make it a little bit better. Maybe people are like, stop it. Stop it. I have to understand the video game marketplace. But during that presentation, everything just sort of clicked in my head with me about what PlayStation is doing in 2023. And I don't understand why people out there aren't sort of picking up on it. So I figured, hey, I'll break it down for them. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a video game YouTuber. So what is PlayStation doing in 2023? They're essentially playing the long game with this year. This is going to be a quiet year for PlayStation, and let me tell you why. Because essentially, looking at what they're doing in the marketplace right now, they're the top selling system in the NPD numbers, with no real big game to sort of complement that. They're the top selling system for 4 weeks, 5 weeks in a row right now in Japan, with no real big software supplementing that. They're selling on the name brand alone, which is something that Nintendo managed to do in, some of the past years. Like, yes, there were games, but, everything sort of post Animal Crossing, I felt was just Nintendo selling it on the Switch name alone, because there wasn't really anything super crazy that you absolutely need to have a Nintendo Switch for to play. Like, everything up until Animal Crossing, look at that first year of the system, huge heavy hitter titles, and then everything else was just kind of fan service up until or after Animal Crossing came out. Just my opinion, maybe you feel differently, but the PlayStation 5 is selling exponentially well. They also are introducing PlayStation VR 2, which they do not want to be a failure. Now, I have a PlayStation VR 2. I'll actually be doing a short. Brett, you'll be editing that too. It won't be super hard, but this is how I tell Brett that he's going to be doing work. I just put it into these videos that he has to edit. Surprise. But yeah, with PlayStation VR 2, the technology is absolutely incredible, but the software is definitely lacking. Like, Horizon is fine. You climb a lot. The Star Wars game, it's all the Star Wars stuff together. Pretty cool. I enjoy it. Some of the other stuff I've checked out, but really the most impressive thing to me, by far, was Gran Turismo 7. Holy Christ on a cracker. This is next gen. This is the most next gen experience I've had with either a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. It is absolutely mind blowing what they did with that. Like, there's a car, that's what the short's gonna be. It's gonna be real life versus Gran Turismo 7 and VR 2, PSVR 2, because there's a car that's very, very similar to mine. A few differences here and there, but for the most part, the interior is the exact same. And I want to show the interior of the car in the game via VR versus what it's like in real life. Because when I put that headset on and I'm sitting in that car, I'm like, I need to adjust these things. I need to adjust my rearview mirror because I'm thinking it's my car. It's absolutely stunning. PlayStation is putting a very strong emphasis on PlayStation VR 2 because, like I said, they don't want it to fail. They don't want people to feel cheated after spending $550. It's the most, it's one of the most expensive VR headsets on the market, but the technology behind it is absolutely incredible. So I feel like that's a strong point of emphasis, but even more so, I don't necessarily think Sony needs a whole bunch of titles for this year on the scale and scope of things like Spider-Man 2 because of what they have going on with third-party companies. You gotta remember, Sony has so much marketing rights to a lot of these third-party companies and these third-party games. Games like Resident Evil 4 Remake. If you ask the average person who's a very casual person, they would assume that that was a PlayStation exclusive title when in actuality, it's not. It's also coming out on the Xbox. We've heard rumors of things like Metal Gear Solid being announced this year and potentially releasing this year. I'm sure that will be a PlayStation, at least timed exclusive. Final Fantasy 16. That game is going to be absolutely monstrous. It's going to be massive. Once again, a PlayStation exclusive title. They don't necessarily need to churn out games the size of Spider-Man 2 alongside of it to have a successful year when you have these third-party companies that are seeing the results on the PlayStation platform. They're seeing the results because of the continued system sales of this. So now they're like, well, we could put our games on this system. We don't have to worry about it. And, we could put exclusives on the PlayStation. As long as they're quality exclusives, I think they're going to sell pretty damn well, especially if Sony isn't doing a lot this year. Now, I'm not going to say that Sony's doing absolutely nothing, because one thing that people seem to be forgetting is I feel like this is the year that more remakes and remasters sort of come out from the first-party companies. We saw it with Nintendo stealth dropping Metroid Prime Remastered, an absolute masterpiece. Xbox doesn't really have quite the full ability to do that because you can't get people to pay for it because most of your back catalog of stuff is playable on there, but I guess you could do that. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, what does Xbox really have as far as remasters that hasn't been available on the Xbox platform? But Sony and PlayStation, once again, I don't know if I've said this before, I feel like I have, but Christ on a cracker. There's a million freaking games from the PlayStation 1 era up until the modern era. You have PSP games and PS Vita games that you could do. Ports of these games, enhanced ports of these games, budget price releases at $35 or at $30, $40, $50, stuff like that, depending on how much amount of work went into it. Like, that's supplemental stuff. That's stuff that people are going to want to buy. Look at the sales of Metroid Prime Remastered. It's not just selling because it's a great game. It's selling because it's a great remaster. It's taking a game from a classic era, putting a new coat of paint on it, allowing a more modern control scheme, and it's blowing a lot of modern games out of the freaking water with its quality, because quality doesn't diminish over time. And if you're able to harvest that quality and make it applicable to a modern era, you've won the game. It's all about the game and how you play it. So I think PlayStation is going to have a kind of low-key 2023, but I don't think that's anything to worry about because of the fact that they have all these studios working on all these different games. Let's say they only release Spider-Man 2 and maybe some remasters and smaller titles, a focus on PlayStation VR 2, but then you have all these third-party companies that are still putting their games out on the PlayStation platform, a lot of them being exclusive titles. Like, will you really notice a difference? Do you care who's actually publishing, Final Fantasy 16? All you know is that at the end of the day, it's an exclusive on the PlayStation 5. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot of, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of, down behavior on PlayStation right now. Everyone's kind of like, what the hell are they doing? This, that, and the other is stupid. They're ruining it. And I just don't quite see it that way. A lot of these bigger games are going to take time to develop. We're getting to this point. Well, there's probably going to be some sort of a gaming crash just because of how big these titles are, just because of how crazy everything is getting with these development cycles of these games. It takes years and years and years. But if you can make a little remaster, to fill in the gaps there, I think people would be happy with it. It's better than having nothing. It's better than having nothing at all. But let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below. Am I qualified enough to talk about PlayStation? I mean, I've been playing PlayStation for a very long time. Some people think I only know about Nintendo stuff. I honestly, I've forgotten more about video games than some people will ever know. It's a very important part of my life. Frickin' A, dude. Back in the magazine days, you learned everything, soaked it up like a sponge. Pointless information about video games. But hey, at least it got me somewhere in life. Let me know what you think of everything in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Thank you to Brett for editing this video and making it entertaining, because I wanted to go watch the Knicks game, so he better have a good turnaround time on it. Be sure to like the video. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video.
Later.